know if one thing is true. Do you still love me like you used to do? What if they alright? Baby, can we still shine? Tell me that we'll be fine. Always still alive. What if they alright? Baby, can we still shine? Tell me that we'll be fine. Always still alive.
All right. Well, thank you guys again for being here at How Love Can Last Forever. After all, I know we say after all, it's not a fairy tale. And boy, do I have a guest that'll prove that today. Today we have Joneen Mackenzie, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and what she does. But I tell you, she is a powerful force in this world of relationships and marriages. And we're going to find out as we go through. Along with the passion, she's got some statistical data that proves what I kind of feel like I've always known. So I'm excited to let you guys hear and see her story, and then the work that she's been doing for so many years. But with that, no further ado, Joneen, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Oh, good morning. Thank you, Calvin. I'm just so excited to be here. My name is Joneen Mackenzie, and I'm the president founder of the Center for Relationship Education for a couple of more days. Actually, I'm doing a succession plan with my daughter. I've been running this organization for about 30 years, and I am been picked up by NARME, which is the National Alliance for Relationship and Marriage Education, to make marriage cool. Our goal is to make marriage cool in the public square. And so my daughter's going to be taking over the Center for Relationship Education, where we train people, teachers, social workers, doctors, counselors, and even HR directors in the workplace to teach the skills we thought we had. Everybody thinks they have these skills, but they don't.
I love it. Everybody thinks they have these skills, but they don't. And we're going to find out more about what those skills are a little bit later on. But that is so critical. And so that tells me your work experience, your story. Is there anything else you want to add to your personal story in terms of what motivated you to get in this industry, to get in to do this work?
Well, it was kind of serendipitous because I was a military nurse. I was a nurse in the Air Force for several years. And then we moved to Evergreen, Colorado after being in Germany and San Antonio and different deployments. And I had 4 children in 6 years. And of course, that was hard to work in ICU and have all that responsibility, and then also have all that responsibility for those little ones. So I decided to take a breather and be a mom. And I became very involved in my children as they were growing up through MOPS, mothers of preschoolers, and being a coordinator of MOPS. And then also, as the kids got older, being the PTA president for their schools. And my 7th grade son came home with a permission slip to learn about his body in science class. And I thought, wait a minute, you're supposed to learn about your body in science class. Why am I getting a permission slip? So I went to go look at what they were teaching, and they were teaching reproductive science. And then after the reproductive science and the plumbing of reproduction, they were teaching about contraception. And I thought there was a missing piece here. How do you get from body parts to contraception? And I told the teacher, you're missing this relationship piece. And he's, well, I've been teaching this curriculum for 20 years. And then I started researching the curriculum, and I started researching the backstory of where the curriculum came from. And I was horrified. And so I was teaching Red Cross babysitting. I was teaching CPR. I was teaching an etiquette class. I was teaching first aid as enrichment classes to teenagers. And I asked their parents if I could bring them to my house for pizza, and I was going to ask them some questions. And they trusted me. And so we had about 70 kids in my basement with a flip chart in 1991. And here was the question. The question was, what do you guys want to know about sex? And they almost swallowed their tongue.
I'm sure.
Because no adult ever asks kids, what do you want to know? And I could have knitted a quilt with how long it took the first kid to answer. And there was an awkward silence, but I just waited it out. And here's what the first kid said, and it broke my heart.
Oh
He
my.
said, Miss Mackenzie, does anybody stay together anymore?
That was the
And
wait. I gotta slow this down. You asked them, what do you want to know about sex? There is this long pause, and the first question is, does anybody stay together anymore?
that was the first question.
Oh
And
my.
it set the tone for where the questioning was going to go. And then the next teenager said, how do you stay together forever? It and how do you show affection, and how do you pick a partner, and how do you know that this is real, and is there such a thing as a soulmate? And all of these questions came, not one question about sex. And
Oh
so
my.
I, out of 70 kids, not one question about sex. And I thought, this is amazing. And so I said, I'm going to find out the answers to these questions for you. And this is, I don't have Google. I don't have, I can't Google it. So I went from library to bookstore, and I was getting very frustrated because there was nothing for young people about these issues. And somebody said to me, asked me, do you know about the University of Denver? They have a repository of research about what makes relationships work and what makes relationships fail. I said, there's research about this? Are you serious? So I parked myself at the University of Denver. I became beyond a groupie. I became a stalker. And until they would talk to me. And then I met the professors over there and I said, I need 5 skills for friendship because I want to do 5 lessons for my son's 7th grade class. And so they gave me the skills, and I'm a visual learner, and I'm um, a very fun personality, and that's how I learn is through doing and fun activities
Yeah.
and visuals. And so I put them in fun activities, and then I asked the teacher if I could go back and teach at the school, and he almost had to say yes because I raised a ton of money for the school,
Yeah.
and but he knew I was a person of faith and thought I was going to do something crazy for the schools. And there was no, it was all data. It was not
Yeah.
faith. It was all
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
And the kids loved it. They went home and talked to their parents. The parents wanted more. I wanted more. I wanted to do more. Somebody came in, a parent called the Denver Post. They did a cover story on it. And within a year, I had requests from 40 schools to
Wow.
come and do this. And I knew I hit a nerve. I knew there was something that I was supposed to do with this. And I took out a loan and I called in the curriculum writers and the graphic artists and the researchers. And I started paying the experts to help me because I'm not an educator. I feel like I can be an educator today, but I
Sure.
wasn't back then.
Sure.
And and now we have 7 curricula, and it's all about relationship skills training.
Oh my Lord. Okay. First of all, I need the whole set, like yesterday, like yesterday. But what I love about your story is there's so many parallels to my story. Um. Uh. Wow. I'm just blown away that your 7th grader brings home a note. You look and instinctively you think, how where is the relationship in this grand scheme of things? And then to have 70 kids in your basement and they confirm it immediately. Immediately is it really is affirming to me because in my personal story, the reason why I started my podcast is I've got a 28-year-old daughter, and she would come home and she's having the toughest time with this whole dating piece and this relationship piece. And she goes, Dad, what I see out there is nothing what I see here. And so I'm religious, I'm saved too, I'm a pastor, all that kind of stuff too, but I know the thought process and the stigma that comes with going to church. And so she doesn't just listen to me kind of thing. I'm not one of those kind of fathers who who say you got to stay with me. So she listens to other preachers and stuff, and she'll bring stuff to me. And she kept bringing stuff to me, and it was making me so angry, because there were things like, uh, just some of the craziest kind of things that these people would say around relationship. And I was going, well, that's not going to work. That's going to be a problem. And so she goes, Dad, you need to start one. And so the bigger thing was this: my 30th wedding anniversary. This October, I'll be celebrating 34 years married.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah. But at my 30th wedding anniversary, my daughter got us two gifts. She got us a trip to Cabo. She's a wonderful daughter. And then she did this video presentation of family and friends congratulating us on our 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that happened right at the beginning of COVID. So needless to say, we couldn't go to Cabo until our 32nd anniversary for 2 years. But the other thing that happened was in those 2 years, I kept getting phone calls of people saying, congratulations, congratulations. But this was the unique thing. I had 4 different people from different parts of the country ask me the same question. They said, how do you do it? And initially I thought, well, how do I do what? What are you talking about? They all said this: you guys don't just look like you're married. You look like y'all still like each other. How you doing that? How are you doing that? Now, I've been relationship coaching, life coaching for 30 years, formerly as a pastor for the last 15, 16 years. But when you talk to folks, you help them with their stuff. You don't necessarily talk about your stuff a whole lot. But on my 30th wedding anniversary, for those 2 years during COVID, I found myself talking more about my courting days and my honeymoon phase days and all those kinds of things. And what I found is I had some experiences at 12 and 14 years old that shaped my understanding of the value of relationship. Now, I was a 14-year-old kid. Back then, I was trying to, be pleasing to my family and be pleasing to God. And so I was, holding myself accountable and trying to do what I believe the word says do. But I'll be honest with you, I stayed mad at God. I stayed mad because I couldn't understand why he would tell me to do certain things and not do certain things when he knew my body was raging with these hormones. But what happened was I was at a service one day, and the preacher said, he started off his message by saying this. He said, half of the people that get married get divorced. And I was like, okay. Then he said this. He said, and it doesn't matter if you are saved or not. It doesn't matter if you are religious or not. Those statistics are true across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I got mad. I thought, well, what am I doing in here? If you're having the same success as the world, you're wasting my time. What am I doing here? So for the first time, I went to the Bible for myself, much like you did in terms of going to the Denver library or the school. I need all the information I can get. So at 14, my little 14-year-old brain, the only thing I can see the Bible said was that you get married so you have legal, guilt-free sex. And I'll be honest with you, I thought my little 14-year-old brain, I don't know that I mind that answer. But I remember thinking this. I remember thinking, yeah, there's a lot of girls I wouldn't mind having sex with, if I'll be honest with, at 14 years old. But I don't want to marry any of them. Now, first time I saw my wife, I was 12 years old. She walked into church. I elbowed my brother, and I said, that's the one. He said, the one what? I said, that's the one I'm going to marry. Now, I know it sounds crazy.
At 12.
At 12. At 12. I know it sounds crazy. Now that I'm getting ready to cross 60 in not too long from now, it sounds crazy to me. But when I think about my 12-year-old self, nothing could be truer. But what happened is, okay, so I read where you get married so you can have legal guilt-free sex. And I understood that concept and I liked it. But I also knew that there was only one person I wanted to marry, but there was a lot of people I wanted to have sex with. So because he said that thing about divorce, I said, well, let me see what the Bible says about divorce. Like, because I'm missing something. Something's missing. And so you see where God hates divorce, and okay, we get that. That's kind of like a no-brainer. But then in Matthew it says that the religious leaders were challenging Jesus, and Jesus' response was this. He said, Moses allowed divorce because of hardening of heart, but from the beginning it was never supposed to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now I didn't take notes and I didn't write it down. I was a 14-year-old kid. But as I looked back and as I was telling the stories to these people over these 2 years, I realized that at that moment when I read that scripture, I started making decisions considering my wife's heart. At 14 years old, she wouldn't. She was mean to me. If she was here right now, she'd tell you she wouldn't give me my phone. She wouldn't give me her phone number or anything. But other girls would say, hey, people would say, oh, this new girl likes you. And I would say, no, I don't want to get Elise upset. She's not even talking to me, and I don't want to get her upset. So then we're 17 and we're dating. But I lived in the suburbs. She lived in the city. And back then, we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. You and I understand that. The rest of y'all folks, y'all Google it. Y'all understand. But um, and so we never saw each other except for on Friday nights when she come to my football games, and then Sunday when we went to church, and maybe we could get a movie in on Saturday. So I remember being 17 years old, and I'm at my high school, and I'm thinking, can I have a week time girlfriend and a weekend girlfriend? Can I? But then I think, if she finds out, it would break her heart. And so that theme kept going on all the way through till we got married. That I was always considering her heart because that scripture was in my head. I don't want to break her heart. I don't want her heart to get hard. Um, and so the other thing that it did for me is it protected my heart because I wasn't sneaking around with anybody else, and we got to a place. Now this is where it gets really personal. We were virgins when we got married. We dated for 7 years before we got married. We were virgins.
Good for you.
Listen, good for God, because I still don't know how we did it, but we did it. But I'll be honest with you, I got in a season that I wasn't trying to do that. We were in college. I had my own apartment, and I was doing everything I could to get her to come to my apartment. Right. So finally, she's like, "Yeah, Calvin, we don't have to wait." We go to my apartment, and as we are, things are starting getting hot and heavy in the living room, and we're getting ready to head to the bedroom. She has this look on her face, and I said, "Oh, wait, what's that? What's that?" She goes, "Nothing." I said, "No. What is that?" And she simply said, "I just always thought I'd wait." And I said, "Oh." And so, but what I realized at my 30th wedding anniversary was that it was that day that my intimacy really kicked off with her and with God, because I stopped trying to sneak in the back in the dark, and I started having real conversations with her about my body and what was happening. So when I would get angry because I was sexually frustrated, and she'd go, "What's wrong?" I didn't have to lie to her. I didn't have to make something up. I could tell her. And I found that being able to have that kind of an open conversation at 20, 21, 22 was so nourishing in the long scheme of things. Back then I was mad. Back then, you it was rough. But I now know how valuable it was. And so when I hear you tell your story, um, about how these kids were asking all of these questions around relationship, it is so intriguing, because in my first season of the podcast, How Love Can Last Forever, I knew my story was pretty unbelievable, because it was becoming unbelievable to me, and I lived it. So I interviewed about 15 couples that had all kinds of issues. I think over half of them, at least one of them, had been divorced. We had single parent mothers. We had people who were dealing with having had an abortion. We had all kinds of issues, and I kept centering it around identifying, could we come to an agreement on what the purpose for relationships, or i.e. marriage, is. And we came across that we believe the purpose for marriage and for relationship is to heal your heart. And so we've talked before this, and I know all the statistical data that verifies and affirms that. But today I want to talk to you about how in the world is it that the exact opposite message is out there being permeated everywhere. How did that happen? How did we get to the place that we have to battle against the negative messaging of value of relationships? What would you say to that?
Well, I think that the heart longs for what you have. The thinking about her heart. I'm just going to say that again. Thinking about her heart.
Yeah,
Thinking about her heart. Most people don't think about the other person's heart. They think about their needs
yeah,
and their wants and
yeah,
their desires. And you set this relationship up on heart issues,
yeah,
not head issues.
yeah,
And so the whole culture is longing for that real stuff. Real. I mean, this is real. What you have is real and deep and
yeah,
intimate and almost to the point of being provocative.
yeah,
It's so crazy. And because we feel like we can't get it, we collectively, not you and I, but we collectively, we lower our standards. And we say, I can't go out to Morton's Steakhouse. I think I'll go to In-N-Out Burger.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
we don't think we could get that. So we lower our standards.
yeah,
Then there are forces out there that want to destroy. They want, and some people can't really wrap their arms around that. There is anything having to do with socialism, Marxism, Kinsey, the father of the sexual revolution. Their goal in their manifesto is to destroy the family. Why? Because when you can destroy the family, you look to other sources for what your heart is longing for. And the
yeah,
power becomes outside of the family. The power becomes in money and work and serving a master that is not necessarily God.
yeah,
And there are forces of darkness actually working against uh, healthy relationships.
yeah. And the thing that I have found, you correct me if I'm wrong, but they wrap it up in this self gratifying place. In terms of you should be able to you need to be happy. You need to. It's about you, kind of thing. And what I have found in my years of coaching is if I talk to them long enough, I find out the place that they got injured, the place that they begin to lose hope. For many of it, I would guess it's like those 70 kids that were in your basement. They saw their parents break up, and that was the beginning of them losing hope. The statistic that I've heard for years is that if you ask a child what is most important to them, mommy loves me, daddy loves me, or mommy and daddy love each other, the overwhelming response is that mommy and daddy love each other. And so um, um, and so I what you are saying is exactly what I see in terms of the darkness that happens. But I like to try to do my best not to be so, as a preacher, people always think you're going to be, woo woo spiritual. And I just try to make it as practical as possible. And I try to help people understand that if you learn how to care for somebody else's heart, that also will protect your heart, right? But then I ask them, what is it that you want in a mate? And people can always give you the list of the things they want to receive, right? And then I ask them, okay, well, how difficult would it be for you to give that same list to somebody else?
I love that.
Right? How does that look? And so And then I start to hear all the negative messaging that you hear over the airways. And nowadays these people consider a success if they're able to stay together for a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm thinking, okay, what's wrong? And what I found is if they don't have an agreed understanding of the purpose for their coming together, then almost always it's going to end up badly. And so, oftentimes when I'm coaching folks, I ask them, why do you think you guys are together? And then you'll get some people go, well, like religious folks, the Bible never promised you to be happy. And I said, well, hold up, wait a second. I'm telling you, when I got married, I was looking to be happy. I don't know what you were looking for, but I expected to be happy. I don't have any expectations. Yeah, but the Bible says you got to die. I said, well, does it really say that? If you look at Ephesians, it talks about how husband love your wives like Christ loved the church. I think the biggest mistake that we make is we read that scripture thinking about a husband and a wife, as opposed to thinking about Christ and the church. Because it says Christ loved the church by washing us with the water of the word to remove our wrinkles, stains, and blemishes. And so when anybody talks to me about dying, I say, well, I think that what the Bible means about dying is he wants to kill our wounded places. He wants to kill our traumatic places. He wants to kill our broken places. And it's by the water of the word. Now, for me, the Bible has always been a place that helps me to develop healthy character and skill set. It really hasn't been a what's the word I'm looking for? It hasn't been this deep mystical thing that I think a lot of times in the church world you can make it. And so what I found with my podcast is I can have conversations with people, and I've been doing a lot of man talks where I'll be quoting biblical themes, biblical scriptures, but they'll never know it because I talk about it in everyday real life. This is real life. And so after we get finished talking about it, and I go, that makes sense. That sounds good. I go, yeah, so read this scripture because I think it speaks to that. And then they'll go, oh. And so I'm on this journey to try to help people understand how the Bible is not a fairy tale and it really can help you, kind of thing. But at the same time, what helps me is I can go into any secular field, never quote a scripture, and still give you the principles that I believe come from the Word of God that speak to the statistical data that you've been researching for the last 30 years, kind of thing. And so it's a real journey for me. But now that I'm in the podcast world, I'm so grateful that I was able to connect with people like you and Richard that have been doing this work for so long, and not just doing it in the church world, but just doing it across the world. Because I believe that that's the key to everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the key to everything. And, people want to, minimize it to just marriage, but the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. It doesn't say it's not good for man to be single. And I've coached tons of married couples who the first thing they say when they sit down is, I feel so alone. And so it helps me to understand that we might not understand the right purpose for us having to get together. Would you agree with that, or would you add anything to that? What you believe the purpose is?
Well, there, I just think of how we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And even if you're not a person of faith,
Yeah.
we are, even our Constitution talks about we are endowed by our Creator.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting. When I was in college and I was taking a microbiology class,
Uh-huh.
I had a professor who was pretty amazing and fun. And I really loved that class. And one of the things he did was he had us look in this microscope at different amoebas. And amoebas were on this little cell, and we're looking at a microscope. And he says to me, what are they doing? What are the amoebas doing? And I thought, I don't know. Look at it again. I don't know what they're doing. He goes, well, look closely. Look closely. What are they? And I look up and I go, I didn't even know what to look for. I don't know what, he goes, are they moving away from each other? Are they moving towards each other? And I said, oh, now I know what to look for. And I'm looking under the field of the microscope, and they were moving towards each other.
Yeah.
And here's what he said. That's called proximity seeking behavior.
My.
All of life looks for proximity seeking behavior and to be cloistered with another. And then on top of that, there's a 75-year study, the longest longitudinal study ever done by the Harvard College of Human Development.
Okay.
And they took all these people, 300 or 400 or 500 of them, and they followed them for 75 years.
Okay.
And what kind of jobs would they get, what kind of education, how they did in school, their medical records, their brain scans, how they talked to their parents, how they talked to their brothers and sisters, if they were married, how they talked to their spouses. And the conclusion of that study was they were looking for what is the causality, what is the secret to happiness. And the secret to happiness is and health, by the way, as a nurse, that makes me even more interested.
Yeah.
Physical health is the secret to happiness and health is high quality, close relationships.
Absolutely.
And so I think that was put into our cellular structure.
Absolutely.
And so when we have healthy relationships that we belong and that we're seen and we're respected and we're honored and we're affirmed, that's what gives us meaning and purpose in life. And another thing, speaking of Harvard, is I just learned a couple of years ago about the Harvard Human Flourishing Study.
Okay.
And this was another serendipitous. I was writing grants in my basement during COVID and looking for data to undergird my narrative because the government likes a lot of data.
Yeah.
And I came across the Harvard Human Flourishing Study, and I saw that how did this study come about? Well, they wanted to know what it means to be well. What does it mean to be well? If I was in a seminar and I asked a huge crowd of people, what does it mean to be well? I would get several different answers.
Yeah.
And in fact, in this country, we have wellness everywhere. We have Live Well, which is a pot shop.
Yeah.
We have corporations having wellness clinics. We talk about wellness. And what does it mean? Meditation? What does it mean? Eating right, sleeping? What does it mean? Well, Harvard did a deep dive in the literature.
Okay.
And it took them 5 years with
Yeah.
all these very erudite PhDs.
Right.
And they came up with 6 domains of human wellness called flourishing.
Okay.
And let me tell you what they are.
Yeah, please.
And your audience will flip out because it really clarifies the confusion.
Okay.
And they're not necessarily in numerical order.
Sure.
Okay. They're all important.
Yes.
So the first one is happiness and life satisfaction.
Yeah.
Happiness and life satisfaction. And they're measurable. All of these are measurable because Harvard measures everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And the second one is mental and physical health. The third one is meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose. Fourth one is character and virtue.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Character and virtue.
Yeah.
Fifth one is close social relationships.
Yeah.
And the sixth one is actually to undergird all the other 5 is material and financial security. You can't be living in survival mode and be flourishing.
Yeah. Absolutely not. Yeah.
So that is my goal, is to talk about those 6 domains of human flourishing from a health perspective, and to say, we can teach you how to do this. This is a skill set. I remember being at a conference put out by the government not too long ago, and the head of the Division of Adolescent and School Health, the director, was speaking, and somebody asked the question about bullying and cyberbullying and what do we do about all this and wringing their hands. And here's her answer. Her answer was, kids just need to be kind. Well, okay. That's like saying to a couple, you just need to communicate.
Right. Right.
It's a platitude.
Yeah.
So I got up to the microphone.
You didn't, did you?
And I said, I think you know what we need to do? We need to teach what it means to be kind the way you guys teach how to wash your hands. Remember, we used to think we knew how to wash our hands before COVID.
Until COVID, yeah. Then we started singing songs and all kinds of stuff.
Happy birthday twice, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And we thought we knew how to wash our hands before COVID, but the CDC didn't think so. But they think we know now how to be kind, which is a skill set. We have to operationalize that the way we have to operationalize what you said. Think about others' hearts first.
Yeah.
We have another thing that you said that I think was brilliant was that you had this self-regulatory switch in your head that you looked at your sweetheart's face, and you were able to tell that this was not okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's a faith-based thing or not, it's a real wonderful skill.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that I love about it is that 80% of our communication is nonverbal.
Right. It's a real amazing skill to be able to read somebody's face.
Yeah.
And somebody's body language. That is such a skill. And so think about this for a minute. It was a self-regulatory, even though your body was on fire.
Yes.
And it was almost painful. That's what you were describing.
It wasn't almost. It was painful.
Okay. It was painful.
It was painful.
But you regulated, that body didn't have dominion over you. You had dominion over it. And it says in our Constitution, this is not just about marriage and family, and this is about the strength of our nation. This experiment that we are in for freedom.
Yeah.
And this experiment of having we the people.
Yeah.
And not we the government.
Yeah.
Is for one of our founding fathers wrote it in the Constitution and said, this document, this Constitution, this experiment is for a self-governing people.
Yes.
And what you did during that moment, you self-governed.
Yes.
Right now in our culture, there's not a lot of us who are self-governing.
You're right. And it's the reason why my life coaching business is flourishing. And it's the reason why, there is such a need for what we do. Absolutely such a need for what we do. And it's so funny. I love the 6 things that you just, and I'm so glad I can go back and rewatch it, because I'm going to grab all those studies and start to study them too. But the way that I talk about, I use 4 things, and they came from Rick Warren, in terms of what healthy relationship is supposed to do for us. It simplifies our decision making, increases our satisfaction, reduces our stress, and then it prepares us for eternity. It gets us settled in knowing the reason why we exist, and the reason why we exist is to really help somebody else. But if we don't learn how to help somebody else from the help that we've received, then we kind of will be like the blind leading the blind. And so and I love the fact that you bring up the Constitution and this experiment that we're in. And one of the things that I love about the study that I did around it is that they created a document that can correct itself. I mean, think about it. Our founding fathers were slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of being slave owners, they created a document that could correct even that mistake.
And you bring up a great point, and I agree that our founding fathers were not perfect, and
And who is?
they were doing what they were doing in the order of the day. But when you talk about slavery, the first thing that comes to mind is there are more slaves today than there were back then.
Absolutely.
And the slavery is in trafficking, but it's also the slavery to substances,
Yes.
to stealing.
Yes.
You're in bondage when you're that. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you a story.
Yes, please do.
So you talked about simplifying your decision making.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was at another conference in Atlanta. I had a CDC grant at the time. I was having lunch with the head of the Division of Adolescent and School Health, and we're sitting at this table, and this menu was kind of like the Cheesecake Factory menu. It had so many choices.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about that. It wasn't about the food at that point. It was, I wanted to talk to this guy. I mean, I was so delighted that he would have lunch with me. I was over the moon. And so I just said, give me a Caesar salad, no croutons.
Uh-huh.
Okay. A Caesar chicken salad. And he's looking at the menu and he's going, oh my gosh, there's so many choices here. And he's taking a long time. He said, I'll have what she's having. He goes, that menu was overwhelming. And I said to him, and I'm not going to say his name. I said, imagine how kids feel. Yeah. They have they don't even have, they're having to choose whether they're a girl or a boy.
Yeah.
There are so many choices.
Yeah.
About what you can do.
Yeah.
And if you can simplify an adolescent's decision making, especially when their brain is not quite done.
Yeah.
That, their brain, their prefrontal cortex is not quite done. That's why they have parents.
Absolutely.
That's why they have coaches. That's why they have teachers, is so that those teachers and coaches can guide those young people in simplifying their decision making. But if you at maybe 7th or 8th grade, and that's what I did with my children, is let's set some goals for you. What are the things that you want to achieve? Not what I want you to achieve. Yeah. What is inside of you?
Yeah.
And let's make sure that you put those blinders on, that you just don't get into those doors that might take you off track.
Yeah.
And then I learned later that when a child has a future orientation, or even an adult, that's a protective factor. So if you have, and here's another thing that goes into this marriage area. I asked these teenagers in high school, how many of you want to marry?
Yeah.
And a lot of hands go up. It's getting less and less, which makes me a little concerned. But the hands go up. And then I asked the question, how many of you think you could be married for a lifetime? And very few hands go up. Yeah. So there's this gap. Here's what I want.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to get it.
Right.
So what we do is help them get there.
Right. And I think the thing that I think that has been so empowering to me is that you guys have so many great how-tos. But my mission, I've been trying to get them to understand what is there. Like, what is in other words, the purpose for your gathering is this their place, and that their place is a place where your heart is healed. And like Richard says in his AIM curriculum, being heard is so close to being loved that it's hard to tell the difference. And I can't hear you unless I am more concerned about you than I am about what I have to say. And so this learning how to care for somebody else. And so what I have found is many people like myself who are being successful in relationships, they are doing the things that communicate they care for each other's heart, but nobody's ever labeled it. Nobody's ever put it out in front of them so they know, oh, that's the goal I'm going to. Because right now what I have found is so many people think that good, healthy relationships just kind of happen to you. Oh, you got lucky. Oh, you saw her at 12 years old. Oh, well, boy, God really blessed you. And God does bless me. But the reality is God's not going to choose my relationships. I am. And I'm going to choose it by, and I forget the word you just said already, that you read with that you looked in the petri dish and saw, but
Oh, it's called proximity seeking behavior.
and so proximity behavior. Okay,
Seeking,
you got it.
Chris, you seek proximity. You seek something close to you.
Right. And so now if what is close to me, if I'm trying to do the things that care for somebody's heart, imagine what that's going to have me seeking for, what I'm looking for. There's a couple of stories that jump in my head. One story is I went through my little midlife crisis and I wanted a convertible, right? And so I thought, man, a nice BMW convertible. But the only BMW convertible I had ever seen was a little 300 deal, right? And I thought, I'm too big to be in one of those things. I need something bigger. And so I went online at the BMW website and I saw this 7 Series convertible BMW. I thought, oh my God, wow, that's perfect. I said, but I've never seen one. They must be just making them over in Germany, right? The next morning, I went to work. I saw 3 of them.
Wow.
And it was only because I now knew what I was looking for. And so often I think when I talk to folks, they can't get to this lasting forever relationship because they don't know what they're looking. They can't see it when it's right in front of them.
Well,
And
a lot of relationships are built on feelings.
exactly.
And,
Mhm.
and one of the things we teach is feelings come and go, but compatibilities and life goals and uh, where you want to live and what you want your life to look like
Mhm.
and values
Mhm.
and behavior and character. Those are the kind of things that you have to look for. And one of the things that I love about NARME is I get to be introduced to all these wonderful researchers
Yes.
who have researched this. And the one that comes to mind about partner selection is Dr. John Van Epps. He would be a great one to interview because he wrote a book called How to Not Marry Your Jerk or Jerkette.
Okay.
And he talks about the relationship attachment model.
I love
And
it.
there are like 5 things you need to do to be able to choose a partner wisely and to say, oh, I wanted that certain BMW, and now you see it. Well, once you learn those skills, then you know how to do the next step. You know how to do this, then you know how to do this, and and then once it's not in the marriage, it's in the choosing. It's a lot of people. The reason they get divorced is because they didn't choose wisely.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. And what I have found is when I ask people, well, when you got like what I did in the first season is I asked people, what were you thinking marriage was in your first marriage? Because I want to say that probably closer to 80% of the people, one of them had been divorced. And most of them would identify an answer that was this quote unquote biblical answer that you were not um, doing. You could quote it, but you weren't doing it, like a lot of folks. But then the larger majority were speaking to the fact that they made their choices based on their feelings,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so for me, people would turn around and then ask me, okay, but how did you do it? Because you talked about all your feelings. And I say, yeah, I did it talking about all my feelings, but, and I didn't have it in these words like you just said, but my feeling was to care for her heart. And caring for her heart, I realized some 40 years later was what protected my heart. Now, I'll tell you another true story. I just came back from my 40th high school reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went through my chaplaincy training, we had to do this one exercise where we had to grab our yearbooks and we had to look at what people said to us in our yearbooks. And this was probably 15 years ago that I did this exercise. And I remember looking at the yearbook and I couldn't believe how many of my female classmates said, "Thanks for being a shoulder to lean on. Thanks for being there when I needed you. Thanks for, thanks for. I thought
Well,
I did that, but now you got to also remember that was the time that I was arguing with God. That was the time that my hormones were raging. That was the time that I made the conscious decision not to have a girlfriend on the side. That was that same time frame. And so at the 40th reunion, several of the people that I reconnected with gave me a big hug and once again reiterated and thanked me. Some of the stuff I didn't even remember. But as they were telling me, it was so vivid that I thought, thank you, God. And so and so some of them talked about how they wished that we had had more and all that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, but aren't you glad what we have right now?
mm-hmm,
And so I talk about, whenever I talk to people, I talk about there's four kinds of love. There is the eros love that speaks to that sexual feeling stuff. There's phileo love. There's and then ultimately agape love, which is the love that God extends to us. But if we would understand how to operate in all of those loves properly in their proper context, it could really bring such great healing.
mm-hmm.
And once again, when I hear you talking about the statistical data, I hear you saying all these biblical things that are just true. That if people would learn how to live in a way that had a high character value, they everything that they're striving for, they would get. That so often I think the like you say, the darkness, the enemy, the very first thing that the enemy ever said to us in Genesis, the third chapter, was, "Did God say?" And I think all the statistical data that you brought up affirms what God says, kind of thing. But the darkness is always getting us to question and challenge. And so, it doesn't matter if your heart got broken because your parents broke up, or I've talked to kids who got their heart broken in elementary school. And then they identify, oh, I'm afraid of getting my heart broken. That's why I keep rejecting people. Oh, and I say, but once again, I get back to the place of asking them, what's the ultimately goal you want? Like I've got some guys who are attorneys doing well, but they can't find a mate. And they've acknowledged it's because they're afraid of being rejected because they have wounds from like middle school. But you would know that because they have all success. And I said, so what are you dreaming about? And so they talk about how successful they want to make their law practice and how much money they want to make and then that. And I said anything about relationship. I said, oh, you've lost hope. You can't even imagine a long lasting relationship where someone is caring for your heart. And conversely, you have no disciplines where you know how to care for somebody else's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And
Let me tell you about the. Are you familiar with the ACE study?
no, see, that's what I want to know. I want to know all them studies because I'm going in on them as soon as we get done.
Okay, well, this was actually a study by Kaiser Permanente that was about obesity. And we have a huge obesity issue in this country, and it's cost a lot of money. And people who are obese also have high levels of high blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes. And it's a gateway health issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so they they did every behavioral modification for this cohort of people who were struggling with obesity, and they hoped to change their behavior by all these behavioral modification things, and they did, and they all these people in this study lost weight by doing all these things.
Right.
And then 5 years later, they followed these people, and they had gained it all back, and sometimes more. And so the doctors are pulling their hair out because they did all the data that was supposed to happen, and they brought in some other people who were psychologists and said, "This has got to be emotional. It's got to be It can't just be about food. It's something more." And so they put together this 10-question questionnaire, and it questions like, "Did your parents get divorced? Did you ever go to bed hungry? Did you ever feel neglected? Were you emotionally, physically, even spiritually abused? Did anybody in your home suffer from mental illness? Did anybody in your home go to prison? Uh, did I mean all of these? There's 10 questions. I can't remember every, but
Yeah, yeah.
this was middle class America who had Kaiser insurance, and like 1 out of 6 had more than 4 ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And then they studied if you have, everybody has 1 or 2 because unless you live in Ozzie and Harriet land,
Which doesn't
right,
exist.
which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But if you have more than 4, they studied this. And for those who had more than 4 ACEs, they had higher levels of heart disease, higher levels of depression and suicide ideation. They had higher levels of all these deleterious health outcomes.
Right.
And they said, what's preventable is predictable. What's predictable is preventable.
Yeah.
And so now, one of the things that we do is talk about the trauma that you had as a child, and those are healed by getting the skills of resilience and grit.
Yeah.
And the healing comes through relationships.
Yes.
Just like you said, the healing comes by being able to share your feelings. And I agree with Richard, to be heard is to be loved.
Yes.
And and so these are the kind of things. I just did a training in Pueblo, and most of these people, all of these people, I mean, none of them were faith-based.
Yeah.
They're all in, oh, I don't know. I didn't even know their faith. I don't even know their faith.
Right. Right. You just did
I
it
don't,
secularly. Yeah.
right. And but they were in health and human services, social workers. And they were like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
we're going after, we're looking at behavior and information. What we need to go after is issues of the heart.
Yes. That's it.
In order to change a person, it's not about information. Think
That's
about
right.
DARE. Think
Yeah.
about DARE.
Yeah.
DARE was the most well funded, ubiquitous program for drug resistance education
Yeah.
back in my day. We had
Yeah.
DARE officers, DARE screensavers, DARE, everything DARE.
Yes. I
My
know.
kids, and 3 of my kids had it, and then my last one didn't have it. And I go, where did it go?
Yeah.
Well, it went away because it didn't work. So then I studied, why didn't DARE work? Why didn't, you know why DARE didn't work?
Yeah. Why?
Because it was information based.
Yeah.
It wasn't heart based. It
Yes.
wasn't skills based.
Yeah.
It was so what we do is based on the data that what changes people is the connection to your heart
Yeah.
and a skill set to see what you didn't see before.
Yeah.
So this is my heartbeat, to make sure that everybody that I come in contact with has these skills
Yeah.
to do life and love well. One of our biggest moneymakers right now is in the workplace. Can you imagine? People,
Absolutely.
I mean, CEOs are complaining that nobody's coming back after COVID. There's a lot of reasons for that. They don't want to come back to the office for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons in the focus groups that they're hearing is because they don't want to come back to a toxic workplace. They don't want to be with people they don't like.
Yeah.
And so we're working with HR directors to train them in these skills. You don't have to love this person,
Right.
but you have to have some kind of a cordial, pleasant relationship with them. And this is how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can learn how to coexist with somebody that you don't have to go to lunch with, and you're not going to spend your weekend with, but you can create an environment that um, is nurturing um, relative to the work that has to be done. Uh, Absolutely. I just had a coaching session yesterday. Um, there are times that I'm trying to help marriages and they don't make it. But I tell them that's not my decision and that's really not my goal. My goal is that you better understand how to heal your heart issues. If you two choose not to do that together, that's fine. But you still need to learn how to heal your heart issues. And so there's this couple, they're getting divorced. and I follow up with them, and I tell them, well, you guys still know you got to love each other, right? You still understand that because you guys have a child,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to interact with each other for the next 20 years at least,
Right.
and you need to have interactions that indicate that you love each other. And I say that when, and both of them say, well, I'm most concerned about my child. I say, well, the best thing that you can show your child is that you love your ex-spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of look at me and I go, no, 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 no. Yeah, you're not going to lay in the same bed with each other anymore. But there's all kinds of ways that you show that you love somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to see your child be healthy, show them that you love your ex-spouse. And so they'll look at me a little bit, but they'll let it marinate and they'll go, oh, that makes sense. And I say, I'm telling you, there is nothing more important to your child than to know that you two love each other. And they'll go, okay, but we're not together. I say, yeah, I'm not talking about just making more babies.
Mm-hmm.
The truth be told, and it gets right to your point, coworkers need to be able to exist in a way that communicate that they love each other.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, I think, reduce love to just the physical interaction. But no, if Jesus loved us and he didn't have any physical interaction with anybody. Love is so much more than society tries to make it.
Well, and with all the connections that we think we have through social media,
Oh my God.
the the U.S. Surgeon General just put out a report. That's the name of the report is called "The Crisis of Isolation and Loneliness." And here we are with these devices that are supposed to connect us, and they do in a lot of ways. They do.
Right.
These are not going away. They're
Right.
not going away, and we've got to stop complaining and whining about them.
And learn how to use them for our benefit.
That's it. We need to learn how to use them for our benefit. And all of us have seen that even when you go to a restaurant and people, the families members are on these phones.
Yeah.
And so what I'm working with is working with restaurateurs, people who own restaurants, to say, let's put a game on the table. Let's put Trivial Pursuit cards or a conversation cards on the table
I love that. Yeah.
so that during the time they're sitting at your restaurant, they're not on their phones
Yeah.
and they're not bored waiting for their food,
Yeah.
and they're hangry, they want to eat, and so
Yeah.
they use these devices to
Yeah.
dispel some of that boredom.
Yeah.
Let's put some games on the table, some fun things that would stimulate conversation, and then the restaurant becomes a wonderful memento of building, rather than get off your phone, get off your phone, all the things that you hear from parents yelling at kids, and spouses yelling at each other, or friends saying get up. You're not going to find that connection, that heart connection, on the phone.
You're not.
You're going to find information on the phone.
Right. Oh, I love
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, so even working with restaurateurs is one of our goals.
Well, and it's so funny because there is a particular restaurant that one of the reasons why we picked to go to that restaurant is because it has a game on the table, and we rush to that table to see who's going to do the game first and who's going to get the furthest on the game. You're 1,000,000% right, and it's and so it's the simplicity of once I understand the importance and the value of these relationships, and then that's why I'm saying that you may have retired, but you do know that you now have a new younger brother or younger, whatever you want to call me, younger son, whatever category you want to put me in. Just know you ain't getting rid of me because
Love it.
because you have so much that can help me to uh, further this messaging, that relationships, they're fun, they're healing. Like, and I tell people all the time, and my wife and I still argue.
Mhm.
My wife and I, we still disagree. My wife and I, we still get mad at each other. But there's never a time that we're considering that, oh, this is going to be the end of it. And it's just learning how to do life with the understanding that relationships don't have to be temporary.
Mhm.
They do not have to be temporary. They have to be properly understood. They have to be in the proper context. They have to have the proper boundaries, all of that. But we can do all of that and they can last forever,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And so just helping people put the proper parameters. And then, like I say, I love all the study work that you have been referring to that speak to building the habits and the disciplines. And I think about this all the time. Deferred gratification is a big part of healthy relationships. What is mind-boggling to me is that we understand deferred gratification in almost every other area of our life. If a banker tells you to defer your gratification relative to buying what you want to buy, you understand that, you agree with that, you go with it. You know, there's just all kinds of places where deferred gratification just makes absolute education. If you want to matriculate, you understand. I got to go to that school for 4 years. I got to go to that program for 3 years, and you will do it. You'll get frustrated. You'll get irritated, aggravated, all of that stuff that comes with it. But you'll do it because you see the end goal. I don't know that enough people see the end goal of deferring their gratification in terms of relationships,
Mhm.
i.e., caring for somebody else's heart.
Right.
And so hopefully we can continue to merge and understand how to expand this message. And I just love it. You restaurateurs, I think that's a phenomenal idea. I've got some other pastor friends who have already tapped into the secular world to get them to understand if these people are more effective at working relationships, both in the workplace and at home, it'll reduce your turnover rate. And anytime they say the most money that companies spend is having to rehire.
Right.
So if I can keep you there and get you to understand how to be more effective with your coworkers, um, it increases my bottom line. Absolutely. I love it. 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 So let me ask you this. You've mentioned a bunch of great studies. What has been the most profound study in the 30 years that you've been in that's made the most impact on your thought process around this subject?
Well, from a health perspective, of course, I'm a health professional.
Okay.
I and I'm also a patriot because I love my country. I
Yes.
remember when I was getting into the Air Force and I was at Big Spring, Texas, and I was learning how to put my uniform on, and then we had to dress up, and they were raising the flag, and reveille and all that kind of stuff. And I was standing there and I was so moved by the whole thing. And I was at attention because the nurse corps commander was coming through, and I was crying, and it was an ugly cry where I would my snotting all over my uniform.
My.
And she's coming by me and she said, "Lieutenant, you may wipe your nose."
My. Because you stayed at attention.
I stayed at attention because she was coming through the ranks and I just didn't think I could
My.
with my white gloves and everything. And she said, "Lieutenant, you may wipe your nose." And I thought, oh my gosh, my heart is I love my country. And what I'm seeing that's there's social challenge that we have in this country, the social challenges of crime and violence and non-marital childbearing and poverty
Yeah.
and teen suicide and adult suicide and drug use and
Yeah.
substance abuse and treating people poorly and even diversity and equality, uh, all people groups. What my heart screams is that the research that I look at, the studies that are most compelling to me, is how healthy relationships and healthy connections, and healthy is the operative word,
Yes.
um, heal all that.
Yes.
If we had if we had healthy families, we would not have what we're dealing with right now.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
healthy families, healthy marriages, healthy families. I think about, and I hate to say this, but it's true. And I'm going to talk about my own children. I'm not going to talk about anybody else's children.
Yes.
I felt like when my kids were 2 years old, they needed to be domesticated. They were like little terrorists. And I had 4 of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I thought I have got to domesticate and it was, this is how I'm going to parent, with kindness and love and discipline. And, I had a lot of people around me helping me parent well, but I said no to a lot of things. And I guided them, and I had this is where you go, this please and thank you, brush your teeth, bedtime routine, because you have to domesticate.
Yeah.
If parents don't domesticate these 2-year-old terrorists, they're going to terrorize the nation, and we see it.
Absolutely.
And government can't do it.
Yeah.
All government can do is lock them up.
Yeah.
And so if you can't listen to authority when you're 2, you're
Yeah.
not going to listen to authority when you're 20.
Right.
And I'm very sad about what's happening in some major cities in this country. And I travel a lot, and I sometimes think, I don't think I want to go there. And I don't think I want to go there. I don't want to think about that in my country.
Yeah. That is so true.
This should not be a third world country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so the studies, there's and we're doing it. We're updating all the research.
Okay.
But there's a 30 conclusions about marriage and family from the social sciences. People who live in a healthy 2-parent families do better in school.
Absolutely.
People who are in healthy 2-parent families do better in job performance.
Yes.
People who in a healthy 2-parent eat better, sleep better.
Yeah.
They are healthier.
Yeah.
They have less disease.
Yeah.
I could go. There's 30 conclusions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And why is it? I'm going to say one more thing. Why is it that the Department of Education in this country gets $68 billion a year, and the Healthy Marriage Responsible Fatherhood grants get $150 million a year? That's insulting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's insulting. And so the biggest predictor of whether or not a student is going to do well in school is their family structure.
Yeah.
So my goal, my job, as I see it, is to let legislators know, if you want to heal this country, if you want to help your constituents, if you want to really be a leader, then you need to promote healthy marriage and families.
Yeah, but the operative question is if they want to.
Well, I think they will want to when they see the data.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the data is off the charts.
Right.
It's
and
robust,
non-disputable. You can't dispute
it's
it.
not disputable. You can
Yeah.
say, I don't believe that. Okay, here's 20 studies that undergird what the social scientists just said.
Yeah.
It's not like it's one study.
Yes.
It's a robust and plentiful documentation that if this happens, this happens.
Yeah. And it's been true since the beginning of time. That's the other thing that's mind-boggling to me, is these studies, everyone, and I haven't seen as many as you have, but the ones that I've seen, they what they conclude has been true since the beginning of time. Yeah.
So all of that being said, it's just about giving somebody something doable.
Yeah.
That they can, and once you start, you become addicted to it, because we know from the research, from the neuroscience, that when you do something good for others, or something good for something like the planet, or for an organization, there are neuro chemicals that open up your brain and make you happier.
Isn't that something?
It's one of the things that you could talk to any psychologist. They'll say the biggest predictor of whether or not somebody's going to go into a deep depression, unless it's chemical in their brain, is to go help others.
Yeah.
Help others.
Yeah, as well. Anything else you'd want to share with the folks?
Well, I just thank you for allowing me to be here. I'd love to do this again. And there's so much to talk about, but
yes.
as you know, everybody is so crunchy busy that I've
Yeah.
got a lot of things happening today, and I've
Yes.
got to sign off. But in
Yes.
the
Yes.
meantime, I just enjoy being with you.
Yes. Yes.
It's just a blast. So
Yes.
thank
Yes.
you
Yes.
for allowing me to be on your show.
Yes. 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 Thanks for coming on, and maybe next time we'll do a roundtable and get a bunch of folks to kind of to let them know what's going on. So, but
Perfect.
once
That'd be
again,
awesome.
I want to thank you again, and you've been wonderful with your time, and I look forward to talking to you in the very near future.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful
Bye.
day.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye now. All right, man. Enjoy.